There's a moment in every man's life when he realizes that everything he thought he knew about women was wrong. Not partially wrong, not misguided, but catastrophically, fundamentally wrong. It happened to me on a Tuesday afternoon in a coffee shop, watching a woman at the next table dissolve into tears over what seemed like nothing at all. My first instinct was to look away, to give her privacy, to pretend I hadn't witnessed this crack in the armor of composure. But something about her tears stopped me cold. They weren't the tears of weakness I'd been taught to expect. They were the tears of someone who had just seen through the lies we tell ourselves about reality itself. That moment shattered something in me, and I began to understand why Aristotle, 24 centuries ago, wrote something so brutal. It still makes us flinch today. The female is, as it were, a deformed male. The sentence hits like a slap, doesn't it? But before we dismiss it as ancient misogyny, before we file it away under the comfortable category of historical ignorance, we need to ask ourselves a harder question. What if Aristotle wasn't trying to insult women at all? What if he was trying to describe something so threatening to the foundations of civilization that we still haven't learned how to name it? Because here's what nobody wants to admit. When Aristotle looked at the female mind, he wasn't seeing incompetence. He was seeing chaos. Not weakness, but a kind of power that couldn't be contained by the neat categories of logic and reason that men had built their entire world around. The female mind, in its deepest expression, doesn't just think differently. It thinks in ways that threaten the very structure of rational thought itself, and that terrifies us, even now, even in our supposedly enlightened age. Aristotle divided all existence into two fundamental principles, form and matter. Form was what something was meant to be, its essential nature, its purpose. Matter was what something was made of, the raw material waiting to be shaped. In his metaphysical system, the male embodied form, the female embodied matter. She wasn't an agent of becoming, but the canvas on which form might be impressed. A response rather than an initiative, a mirror rather than a flame. This wasn't just biology to him. It was the architecture of reality itself. But here's where it gets dangerous. Aristotle wasn't describing what women were. He was describing what they had to be in order for his system to work. Because if the female mind possessed its own form, its own purpose, its own way of shaping reality, then everything he'd built would collapse. The rational order that held civilization together would dissolve into something unrecognizable, something wild, something that couldn't be controlled or predicted or contained within the boundaries of masculine logic. The female mind, you see, doesn't move in straight lines. It moves in spirals, in cycles, in patterns that connect rather than separate. Where masculine thought seeks to divide and conquer, to break reality down into manageable pieces, feminine thought seeks to integrate, to find the hidden connections between things that logic says should be separate. This isn't a weakness. It's a completely different way of engaging with truth. And it's precisely this difference that has made the female mind so threatening to every civilization that has ever existed. Think about it. Every great breakthrough in human understanding has come not from following the rules of logic, but from making connections that shouldn't exist, from seeing patterns that rational thought would dismiss as impossible, from trusting intuition over evidence, feeling over fact. The female mind, in its wildest expression, is the embodiment of this kind of thinking. It's the part of consciousness that refuses to be tamed by categories, that slips through the fingers of anyone who tries to pin it down. This is why, throughout history, the female mind has been pathologized, demonized, and suppressed, not because it was weak, but because it was too strong, too fluid, too connected to the mysterious forces that rational thought can't map. The witch trials weren't about eliminating evil. They were about eliminating a way of knowing that threatened the monopoly of masculine reason. The diagnosis of hysteria wasn't about curing illness. It was about silencing voices that spoke truths that logic couldn't comprehend. And we're still doing it today. We've just changed the vocabulary. We talk about emotional intelligence now, about the importance of feelings, about the value of intuition, but we still frame these as secondary to real intelligence, to the kind of thinking that can be measured and quantified and controlled. We still treat the female mind as something that needs to be managed, channeled, made safe for the rational world that men have built. But what if we've got it backwards? What if the female mind isn't a deviation from normal human consciousness, but its truest expression? What if the ability to hold contradictions without collapse, to feel deeply without drowning, to see connections that logic can't grasp, isn't a weakness but the highest form of human intelligence? What if the female mind isn't chaotic, but operates according to patterns too complex for linear thought to follow? Carl Jung understood this when he wrote about the anima and animus, the feminine and masculine principles that exist within every psyche. But even Jung maintained that the feminine was closer to nature, to chaos, to mystery, while the masculine sought order and clarity. He gave us new language, but the same fundamental architecture. The feminine as wild, unpredictable, dangerous. The masculine as civilized, rational, safe. This split has created a civilization that's at war with itself. We've built a world based on masculine principles of logic, hierarchy, and control, but we've tried to suppress the feminine principles of connection, intuition, and flow that would make that world livable. We've created systems that optimize for efficiency, but ignore meaning, that prioritize facts over truth, that mistake information for wisdom. And we wonder why we feel so empty, so disconnected, so lost. The female mind threatens this order not because it's irrational, but because it operates according to a different kind of rationality, one that includes the body, the emotions, the unconscious, the mysterious, one that sees reality not as a machine to be operated, but as a living system to be communed with, one that trusts the wisdom of the heart as much as the calculations of the brain. This is why the presence of a woman can disarm a man so completely. It's not her beauty or her sexuality, though those are part of it. It's her way of being in the world, her refusal to be contained by his categories, her ability to see through his illusions of control, her capacity to hold space for mystery in a world that demands explanations for everything. A woman who has embraced her own nature, who has refused to translate herself into masculine logic, becomes a force of nature. She doesn't argue with lies. She dissolves them. She doesn't fight against illusion. She simply reveals truth. She doesn't try to control outcomes. She trusts the process. This is sovereignty, not weakness. And it terrifies anyone who has built their identity on the illusion of control. The tragedy of our time is that we've taught women to be afraid of their own power. We've convinced them that their intuition is unreliable, that their emotions are inconvenient, that their way of seeing the world is somehow less valid than the masculine way. We've made them apologize for their depth, their complexity, their refusal to fit into neat categories. We've turned them against themselves. But something is changing. Women are remembering who they are. They're rediscovering the power of their own minds, the validity of their own ways of knowing. They're refusing to be diminished, to be contained, to be made safe for a world that was never designed for them. And this is causing a crisis in masculine consciousness. Because if women are not the chaotic matter that needs to be shaped by masculine form, then what are they? And more importantly, what are men? The future belongs to those who can integrate both principles, who can think with both logic and intuition, who can plan with both reason and feeling, who can lead with both strength and compassion. The female mind isn't the opposite of the male mind, it's its completion. Together they create a form of consciousness that's capable of dealing with the complexity of the modern world. But this integration requires men to give up their illusion of superiority, their monopoly on truth, their right to define reality. It requires them to acknowledge that there are ways of knowing that they've never learned, forms of intelligence that they've never developed, depths of being that they've never explored. And that's a terrifying prospect for anyone who has built their identity on being the rational one, the logical one, the one who knows. The female mind, in its essence, is revolutionary, not because it seeks to overthrow existing systems, but because it exists in a way that makes those systems impossible to maintain. It dissolves boundaries that were meant to be permanent. It connects things that were meant to be separate. It finds meaning in chaos, beauty in contradiction, truth in mystery. This is why Aristotle feared it, not because it was weak, but because it was unstoppable, not because it was less than male consciousness, but because it was more complex, more nuanced, more capable of holding the full spectrum of human experience. And in a world built on simplification, on reduction, on the illusion of control, this kind of consciousness is dangerous. But danger and power are often the same thing. The female mind's refusal to be contained is not a bug in the system of human consciousness. It's a feature. It's what keeps us growing, evolving, becoming more than we were. It's what prevents us from crystallizing into rigid patterns that can't adapt to change. It's what keeps us human. So when we look at Aristotle's brutal assessment of the female mind, we should see it not as an insult, but as a confession of fear, a confession of inadequacy, a confession that the rational mind, for all its achievements, is not enough, that somewhere in the depths of feminine consciousness lies a way of being that transcends the limitations of logic, that touches something eternal, something that can't be reduced to categories or controlled by systems. The female mind is not deformed male consciousness. It's the consciousness that male consciousness was trying to become all along. And the sooner we recognize this, the sooner we can stop the war between the sexes and start the collaboration that will define the future of human civilization. The woman crying in the coffee shop that day wasn't displaying weakness. She was displaying the courage to feel fully, to be present to reality without the armor of detachment that men use to protect themselves from the world. She was demonstrating a form of strength that doesn't need to dominate to be powerful, that doesn't need to control to be effective. She was showing me what it means to be truly human. And that's the real threat of the female mind. Not that it's less than masculine consciousness, but that it reveals how much more consciousness can be, how much deeper, richer, more connected to the mystery of existence, how much more alive. This is the truth that Aristotle couldn't bear to face, and that we're still struggling to accept. The female mind isn't the problem with human consciousness. It's the solution, and the future belongs to those brave enough to embrace it.